Hello, everyone. It's great to be part of our one of our coach talks, and I am absolutely delighted to welcome Dr. Juan Delgado, who is the current academy manager at Austin FC. Juan, how are you?
All good here. Thank you very much, Mark, for the introduction and for giving me the chance to talk to you today.
No, absolute pleasure. I think I spoke in my LinkedIn post that Juan is a absolute world-leading youth developer working in 3 different countries. Initially in Spain with Villarreal, Valencia, then moving to Qatar with the Aspire Academy, and more recently, an incredible adventure by the sounds of it at Austin FC. So really excited today to try and learn more about how that journey's gone for you, what some of the learnings are, what some of the challenges have been, and we're obviously all fascinated to get an insight into your current project at Austin FC. So to start with, would you mind giving everyone I know I've given you clubs, but give everyone who's listening a little brief overview of your career to date?
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds great. Yeah. So well, as everyone involved in football, I grew up with the dream of becoming a football player. Uh, Back in my hometown, playing in the streets, playing at the school, playing at the club, and yeah, and trying to, as I said, get better every day. And age 19, I got a very bad injury. I tore my ACL twice in a row.
Oh wow.
So this together with, when you are 19, you start realizing that you might not be the next Messi. So that made me reflect on my next steps. And since I love the game and I wanted to be part of it and keep contributing to it, I decided to study. Right, I realized, okay, I'm not gonna be a famous former player, so I need to build my way out, and the way I can do it is equipping myself, learning, and try to be different from the others doing so. So I started to coach as soon as I stopped playing. I was very lucky because it was when the Villarreal project started as we know it today. It was back in 1999. So I started coaching, assisting coaching the under tens,
Yes.
but it was not even the competitive one. So it was the grassroots. We call
Yes.
it a foundation. So yeah, and I spent nine years there. Coaching, and then more into a coordinator role or director role. Enjoy a lot, learn a lot. At the same time, I was finishing my studies, my sports science, my sports psychology
Right.
masters, and getting my licenses too. So it was my school. VRL was my school, to be honest. And again, from there, I had the opportunity to move to a bigger club at the time, Valencia, where I just stayed for a season. But it was brilliant too, knowing a club with more complexity, more
Yes.
history, and having the opportunity to see in both cases. But in Valencia, I was very lucky because many talented players were there, and I had not the chance to impact them a lot, but I had the chance to see how they, a future European champion look like. And again, in this time, I think Jordi Alba was there in the
Oh wow.
academy, Isco
Yeah.
Alarcon was there in the academy, and then the kids I had more interaction with, Grimaldo, Benfica, Gaya, Carlos Soler now playing consistently, being the captains of the team at Valencia. So I get a taste of how, especially not only the skills, but the mindset, the mindset
Yeah,
that
for
these
sure.
kids, that they were really good, technically speaking, but they were more talented boys around
Mm-hmm.
them, and they made it because of the personality and the desire, and the ability to compete and enjoy this competitive moment.
Yeah.
So from there, I had the chance to. I was already thinking with my time at that time, my partner and now my wife, the the idea of going abroad. You know, it was prior to the crisis, the 2008 crisis, so it wasn't very common to see. We got no a single manager, a Spanish manager abroad. You know, people was happy in Spain, economy was great, food is awesome. We like to enjoy life, and so people was not thinking on going abroad. So
Yeah.
this opportunity came up to go to Qatar. We need to find it first in the map because Qatar wasn't known as is today. People had Dubai as a reference, but it didn't have Qatar yet. So yeah, we went there 2007, and we ended up spending 12 years, 12 wonderful years there. First as a young couple, having the chance to travel a lot. And then we got the two daughters were born there. And again, the opportunity to see something really different because in Spain or in football countries, if you are in an elite environment, you have the luxury of choose the talent. You can select talent. You have people waiting on the doorstep to get the opportunity. And in Qatar, it was the opposite. I mean, we got infrastructure, we got the vision, we got the ambition, but we got 5,000 registered players in the entire country, and this is all the way from the bottom to the pros. So 5,000 players. You got more players in a neighborhood in Barcelona. So the challenge was there. Obviously, as well, the socioeconomic environment didn't support the idea of building a high performance culture. So we had to identify the talent very early, and then nurture and create a bubble, basically. Create a bubble that teach them how to have the high performance habits. We were lucky because resources weren't an issue. So we could travel a lot. We could invite teams from all over the planet almost on a weekly basis to compete against. And again, it was a very different context where I learned many things, but one of the things I learned is you have time and patience, and most importantly, the right people. You can accomplish your goals. And again, I think Qatar is an example of that because the first generation that graduates from the academy, the 6 years of graduation, they became Asian champions, U19. Then they almost became U23 as well, champions. And then they won the national team in 2019, who won the Asian Cup. And it was 80%, I would say, graduates of the academy. So that was a very, very good learning experience. So then again, time to change, 12 years in the same place, willing to learn other cultures and willing to keep making humble contribution to grow the game. And we decided that the US was a perfect place, because the game was growing a lot. 2026 World Cup approaching too, and we had the opportunity to join Austin. Again, a white canvas, and to be honest, that's gonna be that's been a blessing in my career because Villarreal was more or less the same, just starting the project. Aspire was more or less the same, starting the project, and here was fully starting from scratch. So white canvas, big challenge, and the main idea and the main motivation was, okay, let's try to set up the culture of a place. Not only people nowadays they obsess about methods and principles and game models and so on and so forth. But what motivated me the most was, okay, how can we create an environment where people can feel proud of? And methodologies will change, but if you set the right culture, the project will last. So that's what we're trying to do ever since we joined 2.5 years ago. And yeah, very happy, enjoying every minute of it.
And doing a great job. It's fascinating around. I think the white canvas piece is so interesting, and obviously hearing about your different experiences in those countries, I can imagine that each one of those countries has got a very different football culture. But you talk there about the right people, the culture. Would there be any values that have sort of remained with you throughout that journey? So whatever the team, whatever the country, what have been those cultural, I suppose, values or that golden thread of culture that have stayed with you throughout your career? You try and push to the staff and players.
Yeah, obviously I learn, I mean, I'm trying to learn, and hopefully we speak again in some, in a year. I hope I change as well. I always say that I'm trying, and now everybody has to think as an iPhone. So we should update ourselves, and we should try to be our updated version, as we got the experiences. So yeah, one of the things I took with myself, and again, it was a learning process. When you start coaching, you tend to be very coach centric. You have the knowledge, you want to transfer this knowledge, and you change a lot of your practices, your exercises. This is the natural way, of you very eager to learn and very eager to show also that you know. And I think when you get some experiences, you start realizing that you should. I mean, the importance is within the player, and from a coach-centric approach, you start becoming more a player-centric approach, and that's what we're trying to do here. So, how to combine player-centric environment, create a high-performance environment, but at the same time maintain a family-centric environment. So to me, this would be the three pillars, players,
Fantastic, yeah.
family, and high performance. And I think if you can combine these three elements, there is a recipe of success there,
Amazing. And it'd be interesting, I suppose, for the listeners and watchers in terms of maybe a practical example. So if we were, I know you don't spend much time on the grass, maybe as you used to with the boots on coaching, but if we were to have seen you coach when you first started out with those Villarreal foundation players at under 10, and we were to watch a session you delivered yesterday, what would be the key difference in terms of what we would see?
That's a good question. I do spend a lot of time in the grass. I go every day. Yeah. No, I'm trying to be there every day, and to be honest, what I'm trying to do is just observe and help the coaches, and moving the cones, helping with the equipment, and again, I consider myself an assistant coach when I'm out there. I think the coach has to have his space and his responsibility as well, and my job is just to help him, whether he's bringing a water bottle or move a cone, or obviously if I see something, telling him, hey, do you think that it might work, it might help? So coming back to your question, the main difference, I believe, is, as I said, the repetition of the exercises, and understanding that the consistency is very important. And and when I'm saying that, obviously I'm talking about dynamic, open situations, where you barely repeat an action, but being consistent on the learning process. And again, the variability is super important for the human body, to keep adapting and to keep building resources. And I think that should be done at the beginning of the session, and in conjunction with the human performance or the sports scientist. So that should be part of it. All these variations or the variability, working in different motor patterns. But when it comes to the exercise, I think consistency is really a factor to have in mind, and how to go deeper into every exercise. How to, when you first present something, you want to be at this level. When you present it different times, you start seeing that the level of feedback that you can start giving is much more individualized. And to me, and again, that's linking team training and individual training as well. So a team-based exercise could be a great platform to develop individual skills, and if the boy knows and have a preset individual goal, and the coach is aware, and the feedback that you give is not for the practice to be flowing only, but also for the player to focus on their individual goals. That's where the magic happens, because everybody goes home feeling that we have designed this practice for him. So that should be the goal, I think, on a youth coach. And in the session, and asking the player, hey, how do you feel about your goal? Have you been working on it today? And he's saying yes. That's to me a victory,
Juan, we've been talking 15 minutes, and I feel like I want to get my boots on now and run around for you. It's massively inspiring. And on the session design stuff, would that translate in a way that maybe a similar session, i.e. the structure, the organisation, you could deliver with young players, say the under 12s, maybe a very similar looking practice with the under 18s, but the only thing that would change would be maybe the information, the progressions, i.e. the challenges. Would that be a fair reflection of what you're saying there?
Yeah, obviously there are differences in learning, and you have to adapt the spaces, and you have to adapt superiorities, for instance, having neutrals in some cases and not in others. But think about that, the opposition is also 12-year-old, and here the opposition is 18-year-old. So just the constraint is also bigger, right? But yeah, you're right. I think we one of the coolest things we do here that I wasn't able to do before is we have a smaller team. We only have five age groups, so the staff is not massive. We all fit in a room, and everybody gathers together 1 hour a day or 1 hour 15 minutes a day. We review the prior session, and that's why it's important as well to, most of the cases, to repeat the exercises so we can gather feedback from every age group coach. He can tweak it for the next time we do it. We can learn, okay, I saw that, I was giving this feedback, this behavior happened. Okay, let's add this rule next time we do it, because it's gonna help, for these behaviors to emerge. So that's happening on a daily basis. The analysis and also the preparation. I think preparation is key. Having everybody on the same page, and I always told them, I think for me, and one of the main goals is when you have a trialist, the feedback of this guy, the experience of this guy is crucial for us, because we're gonna really see when you do something every day, you don't realize, right? And it's like seeing your kids every day, so you don't realize how fast they grow, But if you don't see them in a month, then you say, wow. So here's a little bit the same. And when we have a trialist, asking for feedback to him, to the families, is something that we take a lot into account. And we want to hear from them that we look like an orchestra as a staff. To me, I always do the same analogy. I think we have to be a mixture of an orchestra and a jazz band at some point, So an orchestra to get set, an orchestra to transition from exercises to exercises, from conditioning work to technical work to whatever, and then a jazz band when we are on the field, and we use this. I'll show you later something, but we have some roles assigned to the coaches depending on the day, and on the game day we put the hat of the maestro, the orchestra, and again that's there are many ways to do it. You have the maestro that is on top of it. Yes. And then you have the guy that barely moves, and lets the team to do the rest. So game day is to enjoy. Coaches need to be mindful of being positive and reinforcing and bringing confidence, but I want them to be themselves. Whether during the week we have to be the orchestra piece, when organizing and setting up things. So that's the main philosophy behind preparation of the practices as you ask.
Such a cool analogy. I can just picture Conte now, obviously on the side. He's certainly not the sit back type of conductor.
Yeah.
But, as you know, Coach Better, we at Coach Better are helping clubs like yourselves, align, collaborate, and communicate around that philosophy. So it's great to hear an example of how that looks in conversation and then also in a digital form. I mean, what would be great from our end is that, and for the listeners and watchers around the context, as you mentioned, amazing opportunity at Austin with a blank sheet of paper 3 years ago. So I suppose if you wouldn't mind sharing the presentation we were talking about earlier, and I suppose it'd be great to dig into how you sort of built that culture you talked about, how you've developed that methodology and aligned it with the first team, the sporting director and the first team manager. So if you could walk us through that, Juan, that would be massively helpful and fascinating for everyone, and me included.
Absolutely. Thank you. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can see you. Yeah,
Awesome.
Your full page.
Yeah. So I'll try to go fast, and try to cover as much content as possible. But again, everything starts here, and the only thing I was very picky before coming to negotiate was the second sentence in here, because we wanted to become a reference on player development, but to me it was crucial to add the last word, the coaching development. Again, I believe that a culture of performance, it has to be a culture of growth, and it has to go both ways, obviously for the player, but also for the coaching staff. If people feel that they're part of something that helps them to grow, they're going to be engaged, they're going to be the best version of themselves. So that was crucial for us. That's a little bit the pathway that we have. As I said, we started with one team, we built it up to 3. Right now we have 5, the 12s to the 17s. We're going to add the second team on 2023, January. And then we also have the feeder program, the COE, which is basically a talent identification program that we run here locally. So scouting-wise, the same thing. We focus in the early stages on Austin-based players. Age 13, 14, we start looking at Central Texas players, and then for 15s and 17s, we go nationwide. And obviously for the MLS Next Pro, we're going to have also international spots. So main goals on the pathway, again, we have two phases, the development phase and the performance phase. You've seen that before for sure, but again, it's how can we start learning how to train and go all the way to consistent performances. So again, that's a little bit the focus and the differentiation that we were talking about through the age groups. On regard the style of play, again, the ideas that or the factors that we discussed prior to building this, and as I said, I was very fortunate to have, or we were very fortunate to have the support of the sporting director Claudio Reina and the head coach Josh Wolf. He came here, he had time to spend with us, he shared his ideas with us, and then we just mimic it. My job was to understand really well what he wanted to do, what we wanted to do as a club, what we wanted to give to our supporters on a game day, and then create a pedagogical model, cascade down these concepts to the academy. This is some of the concepts, again, very general, being collective, having a good positional play, using the space wisely, on and off the ball, and then being brave, taking initiative, and wanting the ball when the pressure is on us. So that's the general 3 pillars, which we'll break down later on into principles. These are the principles. This is our DNA. This is present in some shape or form in every session. And again, nothing new there, but most importantly, and I think we spoke of the record, Mark, on creating the same language.
Yeah,
I
sure.
think for us,
So important.
this is a document that everybody has in their whiteboards when they show the training sessions. The boys talk this language, the coaches talk this language, and it became second nature for us. So the day they or when they have the opportunities, the 17s, some of the 15s had the opportunity to train with the first team, they listen in the same thing. So then, as per the training model, again, very player-centric, we discuss, main value for us, and how can we build all the programs around the player, but most importantly, having in mind at all times this mantra. I call it our mantra, each player is a project. So we need to take them to the next level, whether it's soccer-wise or football-wise, but most importantly, how can we have an impact on his character? And again, I think that's something coming from above, coming from Claudio, and I think it's a very good concept of we already select the talent, we already have talented players in the system. So our main mission is, all right, teach them the game and so on and so forth, but our main impact is character-wise. How can we equip these young kids to have the character that will allow them to succeed, not only in football, but also in life? That's a little bit also a breakdown of how the process look like. Obviously, everything starts with the scouting and identifying or having a clear idea of which player we want to look for. Then having a reflection around the methods, and we talked about that before, right? So which are the methods that every player need to develop, and again, there is a big trend, and I'm a big follower of the tactical periodization model, but we also can do an impact by doing technical stuff with them, ball coordination, body control. So there are plenty of tools that we should be using, and always ask ourselves, what do the player need, at one point. So again, use the competition to develop the mindset, to understand how fast they learn, how fast they apply concepts, having into account always the family and the environment, being a support there. For us, academics is big. In every individual meeting we have with the boys, the first thing we ask is how school is going. Do you need help there? I think it's important they realize that school builds also character and discipline. They need to learn time management to keep up with both the sporting and the academic life. So very, very concerned about that, very, very aware about the importance of that. And finally is the assessment. So assessing the players on and off the field, trying to have a continuous assessment, although we have identified 3 big moments, but this happen every day, every week. We constantly talk about players in these meetings that we're talking about, and trying to see how can we help them to evolve. That's a little bit of what I was just talking about, having a clear line of succession plan, visualizing where we have the needs, seeing how the players are fluctuating, from red to yellow, from yellow to green. So, and again, our goal is how can we bring him to the next level? Is he a red player? How can we transform him to a yellow one? So that's the continuous assessment that we were talking about. As you mentioned before, the connection to the first team, and actually this sentence is opposite to me. It should be youth. Sorry, is right. I'm sorry. First team and youth team playing alike. I would like to say that for a system to function, we hear a lot the academy is playing as the first team, and I think in an ideal environment, we should either say both systems are playing alike, or first team is playing as the academy does, right? So that creates a longer term vision. So that's the model. That's what we're talking about. So we took the ideas of the first team and we create a cycle. we create a cycle that is based on random learning, trying to break down the concepts into a way that we can revisit, but it doesn't happen into blocks because it's proven that it's better to randomize the learning process. And again, we have a week where we focus more on with behaviors, and obviously this is linked to the principles that we saw before. The second week of the month, we focus on depth and how to, make runs in behind, recovery runs, and all the principles attached to this structure. On the third week, we basically review some of the contents of the previous 2 weeks. And then we have the fourth week, which is the competitive week. And we're trying to create a very competitive environment. We mix in age groups. They compete in small side games. They compete against older boys. We also use this for tapering and giving minutes to the players that they've been playing less during the month in official games. So a kind of compensation. And then it's a cool thing we do as well is at the end of the month, we do what we call the team of the month. And we select the players that they've been performing or behaving, or they have done something that is worth rewarding. So we gather all together. We gave them a diploma at the end of the competitive week that they can keep. And at the same time, after the training, we also do the staff of the month. So we're trying to celebrate that the cycle is over and start a new cycle again. So that's the elements that we take into account. Coming back to the differentiating, we call it IDAT, but basically you've seen this everywhere with different names. So the 4 corners, I think, for the English FA. But again, trying to work on the body, on the ball, on the brain, and the heart of the players. So, and the way we structure it on a daily basis is this. And we were talking before on the roles, the coaching roles. So for us, the Mondays observing, having fun, focus on the body. And again, we have a set of strategies before, during, and after the training. The second day is the brain, where we're going to ask a lot of questions, big spaces, a lot of information. So it's the tactical awareness day. On a Wednesday, we try to overload them with emotional constraints. So the coaches try to be more direct. The feedback is tough. They know that's going to happen. So again, they prepared for that. And then we have a reflection. And the most important piece of this day is at the end of the session, when we start talking about how do they feel, when this happened. How do they feel when the referee was bad, How do you feel when the coach yelled at you at one point, So this reflection time is crucial for them to understand that we're creating this environment to give them tools, And finally, the activation day, the last day prior to the game, is all about confidence. It's being supportive, focus on the good things, and creating this environment where the boys feel that they done well, they had fun, and finally the game, as we spoke before, the conductor or the maestro, where the coach feel free to again use the different styles as per the game demands.
For sure.
I'll show you just an example of the practice on a Monday. That's something we repeat a lot. Is a 4x4. Depending on the week of the month, we create different 4x4s. In this case, it's the line work, where they learn how to function as a line, and the opposite, the attacking team is trying to break it and use the principles that we were talking about. Can we go around them? Can we use mobility? And yeah, basically just an example of what will happen in a Monday.
Brilliant.
So I will go quickly here because we don't have a lot of time, but just showing a little bit more in detail how the training session itself look depending of the week. that's an example of what happened pre-training. So we call it a pre-block, where we focus on body and ball and also the classroom piece. So again, we have a mixture of agility and coordination, technical work, injury prevention, gym, and the classroom piece, where we show them concepts, soccer related, football related, but sometimes it's just, let's talk about nutrition, or let's talk about time management. So we believe that these moments are crucial to, again, helping them to build the character and giving them the tools to deal with the daily life and daily problems. So we use the classroom for that, not only for tactical aspects. So again, that's how a week will look like. You see the colors there. You see that some of the colors repeat again over and over. Rondos to begin with. Some of the exercises, I said, depending on the 4v4, you see that it happens on a Monday, but one day is, for instance, is numerical advantage. The other day is positional advantage. The other day is line work. And the other Monday is just a tournament, a 4v4 tournament. So just to give you a glance and an idea of how the program looks like, shall I stop sharing now?
No, well, you can't. Look, I got to be honest, man. I could watch all day.
Okay.
But yeah, happy to stop sharing and probably dig into some questions really that are flying through my mind. First and foremost, I think that's given everyone an amazing insight into the level of detail, the level of clarity, and the level of incredible communication and collaboration you must have amongst the staff to align behind that philosophy. That was world class. That was outstanding to see. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
One question we've got from London actually is around, and it is quite an interesting question, around when you talked about the orchestra earlier and the conductor and the jazz band. Would a fair definition to be around in defence, there's probably more of a conductor feel to the coach and the philosophy, but in attack, there's certainly more a jazz band feel where there's a lot more freedom within that framework.
Absolutely. I think that, you can use this analogy for many aspects of our life, right? So I think even on your daily life, you need to be
yourself.
Yeah. So you need to feel a jazz band once in a while as well, right? But you need a structure to keep things going on properly. Yeah, I like it a lot. I think, obviously offensively, and you hear the big managers, you hear Guardiola talking about that. You hear many of the top managers talking about, okay, I can teach the players how to defend. I can have a game plan, but on the last third is you guys show what you got, and offensively, obviously, you always need to keep a balance and keep connected to the game. So, but yes, in terms of decision making is, and again, if you analyze the word principle, in Spanish, principles, the meaning is start. The start of something is the principio, and it's a cool thing because when we talk about principles of the game, or game principles, is actually the start of something. So you're giving a framework to the player, but within the framework there is freedom, and there is creativity as well. So having principles is helping the players to make decisions collectively, but at the end there is always a level of creativity, whether it's attacking or defensively, speaking. Obviously defending more, but there is also this level of freedom defensively where the players need to communicate, need to coordinate movements, and sometimes there is no optimal solution. There are three different defensive solutions for the same scenario. So, but I like it a lot. I like the question a lot.
We'll steal that one.
Yeah.
No, I think leading to that next question is that I didn't, and probably interesting with some of the coaches and directors of coaching out there, that there wasn't much mention of formations, 4-3-3, 4-4-2, maybe at lower 7-a-side. And I suppose linked to the previous question as well, how do you cater for that then? How do you work to make sure that there's some alignment behind the philosophy, but also those maverick players who are Raquelme at your time at Villarreal? How especially at younger ages, how do you cater for them, but also make sure that we're all on the same page?
Yeah. No, I think that's a brilliant question, though. Obviously, there are two things here, right? You have to have an initial idea. You have to have, again, to me, there are two different things. One are the principles of the game model that sustain your DNA. And then you have the formation, which is basically the structures that, depending on how you structure these, or depending on your formations, you could have an impact on the. I mean, there might be some systems that helps some of the principles to emerge better.
Yes.
Having said that, I think we should, and as academy, we should try to teach them different solutions, and we have a curriculum for that changes every Tuesday. We do what we call the formations game, actually, and we have our 4-3-3 is the starting point, but we put them in situations. This is a Bielsa idea. You can YouTube it. There is an interesting talk that he gave us in Aspire, and there is a second one that he did in Brazil in a congress. Marcelo Bielsa talk about the different formations of play and how they match to each other.
That's what I remember.
So I took this idea from there, try to simplify it, obviously, but yeah, I think on Tuesday what we do is to expose them to different situations, and again, if it's a week, you're gonna be playing as a low block, and this low block could have 3-5-2, or this low block could be a 4-4-2 flat, and again, you're gonna try to break this down. You're gonna give the ball always to the attacking team for 8 minutes, and they need to figure it out how to break a low block with a structure that is different to the one we experiencing. That's one way. And again, that's systematized, that's organized, that happens across the year. And at the beginning, we very rigid, trying to have different scenarios. And then it's more about the feeling, what we see in that the boys need, and we work upon that. The other aspect of it is, you mentioned, I mean, you got a Riquelme in the team. So maybe you have to build, or you have to choose the formation around the players you have, and again, trying to maintain the principles, I think is crucial, trying to maintain the principles. But if you don't have quick wingers, what's the point of playing 4-3-3? So maybe you need to go to a diamond, which allow these creative players being inside. I'm just giving
it's a great example, right?
But again, I think is. And it depends on every context. If you are Ajax, you've done the 4-3-3 all your life, you can choose players age 8 to age 12, the best in the country. You know that you're gonna have fast players because your country produces wingers, by nature. So it makes sense for Ajax to stick to a 4-3-3. But if you go, as we were talking about, you go to Qatar, where you have 40 talented players in the country, so maybe you need to figure it out. Okay, if I have 40 and I break this into 3 groups or 60, what each group could look like based on the talent I have and the profiles I have. So I don't think there is a straight answer to that. I just see that there is different factors that you need to take into account.
Yeah, and for sure, I think it's interesting. I think probably maybe a position sometimes can give you an anchor. So if a young player grows up playing as a number 7 on the right wing, the 4-3-3 for his whole journey, I suppose you only really understand if they understand principles when they're put in a slightly different context, starting position, view of the game. Got a great question from Cody around, I can imagine your match cycle is quite repeatable. So based on the mesocycle, what would you adapt in regard to coaching styles or the program in maybe a 2-game week? So if you didn't have that Saturday to Saturday, Sunday to Sunday, if it was Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, like it is for the first team, I suppose, what would be your advice for coaches on what to take out and what to refocus on?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I think again coming back to what we do basically we play a lot of weekends. We play Saturday, Sunday. We have two headers. We just train 3 days this day, and then again the model I showed you. I forgot mentioning something. The way we are evolving right now is the coaches also have some windows to prepare the weekend. I don't think that's crucial. The general idea is, hey, we have our method. We want to teach the game. There is a certain way of, and again, that what I show you is not mine. This is been developed by the coaches. This has been a learning. This is an endless process. All these practices are changing, and we are reflecting. And okay, this exercise works better. So when it works, we call it. It becomes a core exercise. Okay, yes. And then within this core exercise, we pick what we feel is best, or what the boys are needing at this time. And within the structure, the coaches also have 1 or 2 windows where we call it a choose your own, right? We give them half an hour, half of the pitch or 3/4 of the pitch, and we say, hey, you know your team, you know what they need. You might have a big game ahead, which is good for the boys to. Again, we don't build our entire model based on the opponent, but I think it's also an educational piece of giving the guys the opportunity to say, okay, we're going to face this on a weekend. That's what we're trying to do. Are we able to practice it and to put it into the game day, So the coaches have this window. And coming back to the questions, if you said playing Monday and weekdays, you say?
I suppose, let's imagine we're a Champions League team, I suppose. So I was going to say Villarreal, but they've just been knocked out. They did get the semi-final. Let's assume when Unai Emery was preparing that Villarreal team to play Real Madrid on the Saturday and then Liverpool at Anfield on the Wednesday. What would your thoughts or advice be on what to really take out of the program and focus more on?
I think this is a different reality, Mark.
Absolutely.
I don't think this model. If I'm in this situation, it will be hard for me to follow this model that I show you. Because the reality is you need to win the game, and then your focus should be recovering the best players, making sure they are available for the game, and then tweak and find the 2 things that you wanna, neutralize, and the 2 things you wanna take advantage of. So
that's brilliant insight, brilliant, because I think it shows how over the course of the journey for the player, probably that shift, as you mentioned, it goes from 0% focus on opposition to up to 60, 70%, wherever it might be. Another great question from Michael is around biobanding. So really, how do you manage players who are maybe overachieving? So if you've got an under 12 who is every week dominating the game, looking like a high potential player, what process you've got in place for moving players both up age groups or down to support development?
Yeah, that's a very interesting one, and again, we are very new. We have 2 years and a half of age. We start working now, and but we do that. We do that. I mean, obviously, you have the two different scenarios as you mentioned. We're gonna bioband the first group of players next season to play down. It didn't happen yet, but we realized we want to keep. I think 3 boys. There are 3 very talented kids. That they haven't hit puberty yet, and but we believe they're gonna develop, and we need to be patient with. So these 3 kids are gonna be biobanded, and there is a protocol that I imagine that is happening in most of the countries. But here, the MLS has a protocol to prove that he's eligible to be biobanded. So that's one thing. And then the players app, obviously, that's crucial, And this comes back to the analogy we talk about, or the example of the 12s doing the same exercise, but having a 12 opposition, 12-year-old, or the 18. So if you have a guy that things are too easy at his age, the easiest way to do with him is let him train with a year up or 2 year up. So the constraints, the problems, the difficulties he's gonna have to deal with are higher, So we do this we plan it on a weekly basis, very strategically. We try to have players playing up as well, And as we evolve, our ambition is to have more and more players doing so. So shorter squads, if possible, shorter rosters, and to have more ability to move players up and down.
Yeah, brilliant. And that probably answers another great question from Daryl around the difference in the under-12s program and the 18s. And I know we talked about it early in the week, around that player development piece in terms of, I suppose, from a practice perspective, would it be fair to say that those core practices you talked about would be relevant right the way throughout the club, from the youngest age right the way through to the senior team? Because I love that line earlier of, does the first team reflect the academy? And in my own experience, I look back to the Barcelonas of this world, the Benficas, the well-known academies. That's certainly been the case when they've been their best. The first team reflects the academy philosophy. So would that be a fair assessment of your program? There's a lot of consistency in practice design and structure, given the differences between the players' age groups.
Yeah, what we do it the other way around. We actually have the luxury of, I go once or twice a week to train with the first team, and the under 17 coach as well. So what we basically go for is to understand the exercises, and every week we're trying to get a practice and bring it down to the system, So when we do the monthly plan, we already select 3 or 4 exercises that has been happening with the first team, and then we adapt it to our reality. But the process goes, instead of the 12s up, it goes first team down. Yeah. So and again, being on the pitch, listening to the coaches, the feedback, it helps us a lot, because one thing is in a piece of paper or a video, and a different thing is living close to the exercise and understanding what the coach is demanding. So that's the way we connect, first team and the academy. That's a luxury that we have. It's hard to have that, and we're very, very thankful, for the first team staff to allow us to do so.
And I suppose that probably leads, if I go back a step, when you were developing the methodology with the sporting director, first team manager, and the philosophy of the club, how did you manage with any, I suppose, individual philosophies from coaches in the club? Because everyone sees the game a slightly different way. So what would be the best advice for any technical director listening to get everyone aligned on the same page?
That's a brilliant question. I think the most, to me, the way it happened here, and I think I was very lucky. First, to have very brilliant coaches, smarter than me, with different skill sets, but very complementary. So we have guys that they are awesome in teaching, We have other guys that they are brilliant in understanding the game. We have another set of coaches that they love the individual training, and the technical stuff, and they do it brilliant. So for me, it goes 2 ways, right? First is, I think our job should be to first understand what the club wants to do. Second, create a framework that makes sense pedagogically for the academy, and adapt and create a framework. Yeah. And when you have the framework, very important, understand the coach's strengths, and then with this understanding, saying, okay, we have this framework, we want to build something like that. you are a master in teaching, why don't you help me building a pedagogical approach to this? You are super good and you thrive when you are analyzing an opponent or when you're talking about principles. Why don't you help me translating this into, or putting your knowledge into this framework that we have here? So that's the way we did it. And again, it took us 2 years to come out with
Great
where
context.
we are. Yeah, to create the context. But again, the vision of becoming the best in the country, the vision of helping the coaches and the players to develop, the values of player-centric, high-performance, family-centric, and having a clear cycle, which is not perfect. Don't get me wrong. We're changing things every day. We realize, today was crap. Let's change it. Let's find. So
I can't imagine as many of them days at your club. I can imagine that.
Yeah, but it happens, and
sure.
again, it used to happen more. It's happening less now. But again, sometimes things get bored also. Kids not having fun, you structure everything, and then you came out of the session and said, man, they didn't have fun today. So what can we do for this, to avoid this to happen? Because this should be the main thing, and coming back to the questions again, to me, is having a clear vision, having a clear framework, and understanding your staff, and how and help them or give them the opportunity to build this up. It's not me coming with my book and telling you we're going this way, because maybe they do it because you are the boss, but they're not gonna believe on it. And if you do something without believing, the players feel it first time, and that won't last.
So it's brilliant how I think you've brought the mentality of your player development to your coach development. So that framework freedom piece with the players, you've managed to create that with your coaches. And I think for a lot of coaches out there, it's nice to know that any methodology or philosophy that's set in stone can evolve with time, with experience, with knowledge, with conversation. One interesting question we got from Derek was around, you mentioned you guys play Saturday and Sundays.
Sometimes we do.
Is that a club choice? Is that a league choice? Is that helpful to development? Is that challenging?
It's just the demographics of the country. I mean, when you have games against Kansas City that you need to fly in and out, or you have games against, so when they come here, they try to organize, for instance, Colorado. We have 2 teams from Colorado in the league. So they travel to Austin. One day they play us, one day they play San Antonio, and then they fly back. So that's normally what happened. We for instance, we play Chicago and Columbus, So that's is more a logistic aspect, rather than a plan behind it. So, but again, I think it's helpful. It builds resilience. It helps the boys to prepare for tournaments. I think it's a good experience. Not every week, but having once in a while is helpful. Yeah.
No, that's certainly come across listening, but how important you guys place on giving all your players a variation of experiences, different formations, different challenges, whether that be in a trainee or the match context. Look, this hour has absolutely flown by. I can't believe we've been chatting away for an hour. I've taken so much from it. I know everyone else listening and watching has taken so much from it. And it's obviously great to know moving forward now that we're going to work together and share more information and content, because there's so much more I know that you can share and help with the experience you've had. I suppose the last question I can leave you with, and hopefully the listeners and watchers with, is if we go right the way back to when you started as a coach, if you could speak to that Juan coaching the Villarreal under-10s development team, what would be the one piece of advice you would give him?
I think I will teach myself to be humble, I'll teach myself to be vulnerable, and I teach myself to think more about the people around you rather than yourself, and again, that's an evolution. I hope in 10 years time I will think different, as I told you, but if somebody would teach me the importance of being more humble and more vulnerable, and again, I'm thinking more about the player and rather than myself, that would be a big piece of advice.
No, brilliant point to end on. And take this the right way, please. But I feel the biggest compliment I can pay you is that I would love to play for you as a player. And again, another big compliment is that I'd love my children to be involved in any program you're associated with. Not just the football program, but how you also interlink the player, the coach, the family, those values that have come through right the way throughout your career have shone through in this talk. So, Juan, thanks so much from everyone at Coach Better, everyone who's listened in. That's honestly amazing insight. I meant what I said at the start. You are a genuine world leader in the area of youth development, player development. And if there was more of you around, certainly far more people would fall in love with the game and we produce far better players. So thanks so much for your time today. And we look forward to sharing your journey in the future and working together closely.
Thank you, Mark. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
Look forward to